Negobot essentially helps companies automate and bring artificial intelligence to negotiations.
Hello and welcome to another episode of 8. My name is Sanjay Chakravarti. I'm the founder of Tagit. Today's guest is my batchmate way back from college in Podar. He is a person who you never wanted to debate with. He was one of the expert debating guys in our college. And today what he's come up with, and I would say it's close to that whole line in a way, is a startup that helps you negotiate. I'm absolutely delighted to have my dear friend Anirudh Ganguly, who I'm meeting after a long time. Absolutely. Who is now the founder of Negobot. Anirudh, thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much, Sanjay. It's so good to catch up. I mean, this could have been happening in a college canteen, but it's so good to see you, man. Really. And thank you for the opportunity. Really excited.
Absolute, my pleasure. Yeah, I've been wanting to meet you for a long time, and I'm glad that we are meeting in this manner.
It's so cool, yeah.
So let me start. You know the format of the show. First question: who is Anirudh?
So I'm a Bombay boy. I grew up in Bombay when it was still called Bombay. Now in Mumbai. Grew up right across from our college. Grew up in Matunga. Very, parents are both doctors, professionals. So the classic learning was, education was your ticket to, a good life. So did the usual yards. When we went to the same college, then an MBA. And then I spent the last 21 years working across management consulting and then banking. Got the opportunity to live and work in different places, which was great. Sydney, then Hong Kong, then India, then Singapore for the last 11 years. And I then decided to take this plunge. And a little bit more about me, I guess, as you said, I really loved things like debating. I love quizzing. And I found a new term that probably describes someone like me, which is an infovore. So I love information. I love trivia. So that's what's my jam in my free time. But yeah.
Let me get into this outstanding thing that I kind of went through and understood now. A bit of it is Negobot in one breath.
Okay. So Negobot essentially helps companies automate and bring artificial intelligence to negotiations, particularly with their long tail of suppliers and customers. So most companies, everyone follows the 80-20 principle. They spend most of their time with rightly so, with their top customers and their top suppliers in the case of procurement and in the case of sales. But what happens is there is a lot of value that still gets left behind in the long tail because there are probably thousands of vendors supplying hundreds of millions of dollars of value. And those contracts don't get enough attention. So what we do is take over all of that negotiation, trigger those negotiations with suppliers, run those negotiations, close those contracts, and pretty much bring all those insights and learnings back to the companies without them having to lift a finger. And we're doing this for two segments. We're doing this in B2B marketplaces, which is my first client out of Singapore. And we are now starting to do this for large enterprise clients, banks, manufacturing companies, to help them manage their procurement and their sales functions.
Got it. So as the name suggests, I'm sure there's a significant amount of automation out there, or practically yes. The entire thing is fully automated. Absolutely. How much human intervention is still there in this process?
So what we do, and because these are early days, we use what is called a co-pilot feature. So if a human being does not want to, they may choose to run the entire process on autopilot. And you're a chartered accountant. I've worked in a bank for too long, so I still have that slight risk thing that I want the final approval, the double tick to come from a human. So our solution kind of pops up to a procurement manager or to a sales guy saying the deal is closed. Do you want to just go through it and confirm it? But as we go through, I expect even that to go away. And companies can set their parameters saying, hey, below contracts below $10,000, don't, or $50,000, whatever it is, don't even ask, just close it if it meets those terms. So today we have the option for a Copilot to intervene at all points, but it is purely optional till the last mile, and they just have to go and approve or reject it or make a counter offer at the last mile if they don't like what the offer does or they think they can do better.
Got it.
Yeah.
Outstanding. So Anirudh, just something that comes through. So in terms of your key deliverables, is it saving time? Is it giving transparency or reducing cost, better comparison? So what is like those key highlights that what are your sales points? What is your value proposition?
Absolutely. So there is an immediate value that we will look to deliver, which is of two of the things that you mentioned, which is at least a 4 to 5 times ROI or productivity of your procurement and your sales teams, just because they don't have to deal with a bunch of inquiries or a bunch of RFQs going forward. That's out of the way. So time saving is a big one. And we expect to save at least 4 to 5% of costs and add 4 to 5% to the top line of the customer. So that's the dollar value of getting your staff to do a lot more, or with the same number of procurement people or sales people, you can do 2x the amount of business. And on the other side, grow the top line or the bottom line by creating the savings. And I'll talk about that in a minute. The bigger aspect, and this will also connect back to the medium and long term, the value that they will see going forward, which is purely, that's gravy, right? That's going to come as part of the solution, is the insight. Because what we want to bring as a platform to all our customers, and for each of the customers to understand about their own business, is how their customers and suppliers are actually behaving. Because what happens today is, if there's a procurement guy, and I did procurement work in my consulting days, when I finished that 9-month project, I left and all that knowledge left with me. And what happens is, for example, a seasoned procurement guy will know that, hey, if this is a small supplier, working capital is tight for him. And if I choose to pay him 30 days before, he will give me maybe a 10% break on my prices, which is far more important for me because, I get the price discount right away. Now, that knowledge and that insight is largely anecdotal and largely individualized. And what we want to do is capture it and share it with our customers across the board. So, to be able to say that, listen, you as a client, you are seeing these regional behaviors, or your customers in maybe your buying of category A versus category B are actually displaying these behaviors from their live negotiations, rather than a lot of hand waving and what I like to call fact-free conversations, right? Because you kind of don't know at the meeting on a Monday morning what that guy actually did. Right. So that's the longer term value, which I think is, and we don't even want to quantify it. I think that's just going to be the power that we will bring to all our customers, and indeed the value we will create as a company, that I'm really excited about.
Now, sounds outstanding. So just jumping to the next segment.
Yes.
Any learning that you have now, you've been kind of right up there as far as your professional career is concerned for 22 years. And then, getting into entrepreneurship last 18 months, what are the key learnings?
Okay, so I'll pick two. I'll pick one which I think, let's call it a positive learning, in the sense of something that I have come to believe about myself. This is, almost all of it. So I joke with my co-founders that, we say proof of concept. I think the proof of concept I'm going through is whether there's an entrepreneur in me, right? And I think I'm kind of getting there. So that's the first concept I have to prove. So I'll start with the positive one. Look, this solution has artificial intelligence, machine learning, lots of rule-based algorithms that we're continuing to develop. And at one level, it is quite intimidating, right? Because, you and I are bachelors of commerce, and then I've done an MBA. You've at least done something more disciplined, like a chartered accountancy. I mean, we don't have any technical background. You're talking to a bunch of engineers, developers. But at the end of the day, if you can boil it down in first principles, and, Richard Feynman had a great line that if you can't explain something in very simple terms, then you don't kind of understand it. So I can now back myself in a technical conversation to boil it down to simple terms and explain it. And the reason I am able to do that is literally sitting with a blank pad and a pen and drawing out a flow chart or writing out a logic in longhand. So then my conversation with the developer becomes that much easier. Earlier, I used to get a little intimidated by that. Now, I still don't know what the line of code says, but that's kind of not my job. That's okay, right? As long as it does what I needed to do. So I think that one positive learning, to have the confidence that if I understand the problem from first principles, the technology will keep up and follow, right? As long as I don't ask it to do time travel and defy gravity, we are okay, right? I mean, the laws of physics have to apply, that's all. Otherwise, it's all buildable. The second, and that was, I'd say, a little bit of a wobble in the journey, and I have come to learn from, is, so earlier I had started with a development team in Vietnam, very good guys, working with a person who was again great, working out of Singapore. But I started realizing that we are having a communication challenge. I'm sure, it's funny, we all speak English with an accent, right? Including a BBC Oxford educated guy. That's all an accent. And it was difficult to understand each other. And, I am not a technical guy. So it was a struggle. And now I have swapped with that team. It was a very good transition, and I'm still in touch with the developers in Vietnam. They're great guys. But that, if I had postponed that for a little longer, I think it almost can be very fatal. So I think what I would urge anyone listening to this, starting a business, and I think it applies to when you and I have done corporate jobs as well, is to identify those kind of pitfalls early, particularly around people or resources, because that's kind of mostly what we are all working with in the knowledge economy, and make those decisions early. And a corollary to that was, and this is why I'm so glad we are reconnecting, and I'm going to be very shameless about this with you too, is ask your friends for help. Because my current team came to me from one of my best friends from business school, and he just scolded me saying, stop worrying about it. I interviewed these guys 20 years ago. You're going to start working with them in Bangalore, right? And I said, wow, I should have talked to my friend 6 months ago. So talk to your friends. Most of us sometimes feel reservations in asking for help. We should all ask for help. We all need help. So those were two big learnings for me. First principles, and identify the issue early, ask a friend for help, and deal with it.
Perfect. Let me get to the next question. Any habit of yours, personal habit of yours, that's helped you in your entrepreneurial journey?
Sure. No, yeah, absolutely. So look, sadly, I don't have any great work habits, which is maybe not a good thing to admit on this show.
That's modesty speaking, Anirudh. That's clearly modesty speaking. But I'll let you go on that one.
Okay, fair enough. I tell you why. Because there are degrees. I've got a decent work ethic, but there are some people who are just so good with some work habits, right? But I'll pick Sanjay, and this is way down from where I used to be, especially when in college days when we were together, is reading. I still try to carve out, and I say 30 minutes sounds like very little time at some level. I don't know, maybe it doesn't. To read, and it could be anything. It could be fiction, it could be non-fiction. One is it's a great way to just pull your mind out of what you're doing. So I read a couple of great works of fiction, just not even classics and all, just everyday good books, right? Or sometimes it'll be a really good 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel or something, which is a really nice book to read. And I try to do at least 30, 40 to 45 minutes of reading. If I have a late evening shift of work to do, I kind of try to take out a bit of time between dinner, Netflix binging, and getting back to work. And it stills the mind. It makes me, I don't know, I sometimes just connect dots in my head, which weren't there before. I would urge people to just, quieten the stimuli down, because we have YouTube, everything, right? Everything's kind of flowing at you. Whereas reading, you've got to wade into the book.
Anirudh, coming to the last bit, where do you see Negobot in 8 months and 8 years?
Okay. So look, in 8 months' time, we will be getting close to. So sorry, I'm going to make this a little boring sounding, but that's my key metric, right? I want to be doing close to $1 million of recurring revenue. We are going to close this year with $500,000 of revenue. That's that's going to be the non-recurring type, but that client is going to start doing at least $500,000 of recurring revenue. I want to find 2 more clients like that. We go after big enterprises, so there's a long sales cycle, but I think we'll get there. There is a fundraising target as well, but like I like to think about it, the customers actually fund your business. Fundraising is an interim way to get you there, right? It's all revenue, all funding has to come from customers at the end of the day. So that's where we will be in 8 months' time. We will be getting to that $1 million ARR milestone. That's a big one for us to hit. Look, in 8 years, I think we need to be. My dream with this is to help businesses, help communities negotiate smarter and better. And we didn't quite talk about it, but I always used to think of negotiation as the haggle, that you say $10, I say $8, we close at $9. It's confrontational. It's not, right? We're trying to solve a problem together. And I want to solve those problems in multiple spheres. So yes, procurement and sales are what's going to take us for the next 4 or 5 years. We'll be a SaaS business. We will help companies get a lot of value. But in 8 years' time, I want employers and employees to understand what's important to them, right? How is an employee valuing a month of vacation or flexible working from home? Or if you're an early career mom, how do you want to negotiate your compensation? And on both sides, right? So this sounds a little grandiose, maybe, but why not dream big? You're starting a new thing, and I want to be helping, like I said, businesses, communities close over tens of billions of dollars of value, whatever way that value comes to them. And learn more about each other, because I think all good negotiations means we get to know more about each other. There is an understanding that gets created. Suppliers and customers, employers and employees, interest groups in public policy. So I'd love to go in all those directions, man, in 8 years' time.
Super. I mean, Anirudh, having known you now for almost 3 decades,
Too long.
Too long, yeah, absolutely. But I'm sure I have full conviction that I really love the space you're in. I think there is a definitive need, and maybe I express it more because I'm terrible at negotiation, and that's not something I look forward to at all.
And me too, by the way. I don't like it. Which is strange, right, to do this business, but because I don't like it, I want to make it easier, right?
And absolutely. So, once you remove all the fundamental emotional quotients from it and get factual and start trading in discussions, I think we'll get more transparency and get a better job done as well. Because I guess both sides want it to work. It's just that, because of all these EQs flowing through, you're never sure as to what just to leave you with one thought, like I went into the first time, and it's way from anything to do with business, but there's this Passion Street, if you remember, in Mumbai.
Oh yes, of course.
Right. So I was told that when you go in there,
most of my limited wardrobe came from there. So yes.
Exactly. No, but I was told the first time that I went there that whatever is quoted, you just quote half. Right. So I remember there was some thing that I wanted, and that person said, whatever, 300, I said 150, and he just gave it to me. And I was so disappointed with that entire negotiation going through. So side note, but I can pretty much get it. I think once you make it more transparent and fair, I think it's a brilliant space that you are in. And I'm sure that, it will shape up really, really well.
Thank you, man. No, we're super excited. And I mean, I anytime, obviously I'm the proud parent of this. So I have my own biases, but when I really hear friends whose opinions I value like yours, reinforce that, that's so gratifying. We are early. It's very early days for us. I know many people on your show. I was a bit intimidated, I must admit. And I mean, again, thank you for doing this. This is a great show for all of us, right? We all need, as I said, we need help. But thank you. That means a lot.
My pleasure, Anirudh, and look forward to being connected. Thanks so much for coming.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this, Sanjay. So fun.